Whenever you look into your aquarium, you've probably noticed your shrimp are always picking at something. On the glass, the plants, the substrate, even possibly the filter. It looks like they never stop eating. Have you ever wondered why this is the case and what it means for their health? In this video, we're going to look into the natural feeding behavior of various shrimp species and what you really need to know to keep them happy, healthy, and well fed without overdoing it. Let's dive right in. Shrimp are natural grazers. In the wild and in your aquarium, they spend the majority of their time foraging for food. They're detritivores and scavengers, constantly on the hunt for microscopic food sources like biofilm, algae, and organic detritus. This near-constant grazing is their default behavior. Even if you give them commercial foods, they'll still go back to nibbling on whatever they can find in the tank once the food source is consumed. That's not a sign they're hungry, it's a sign they're healthy. This grazing isn't optional, it's essential for their well-being. The reason behind this constant grazing comes down to their digestive system. Shrimp have a relatively simple and fast-moving digestive tract. They can't store food the way many animals can. There's no large stomach to keep reserves. Food goes in, gets processed quickly, and moves out just as fast. That means nutrients don't stay in their system for long, and they can't afford to take long breaks between meals. So, in order to stay healthy, they need a near-constant intake of small food particles. That's why they're always on the move, grazing, scraping, and picking. Now, this doesn't mean you need to feed them constantly. In a well-established aquarium, aside from supplemental feeding, they're often just fine grazing on natural biofilm and algae that develop over time. In the case of filter feeders like bamboo and vampire shrimp, you'll primarily see them fanning the water column for floating edible particles. So while it looks like they're eating non-stop, they're really just doing what they're built to do. But what happens if there isn't enough to graze on? In newly set up aquariums, natural food sources like biofilm and algae often aren't available in the amounts your shrimp need. If you place shrimp into a brand new tank, they can literally starve due to the lack of these microscopic food sources. Trying to compensate by feeding commercial foods during this period can backfire, as uneaten food may cause ammonia or nitrite spikes, which can also be fatal. This is one of the biggest mistakes new shrimp keepers make. They're so excited to see shrimp in their tanks, they don't realize the risks these delicate creatures face without a mature, food-rich environment. Biofilm and algae take time to develop, which is why it's essential to let your tank cycle properly before adding any shrimp. The more established your tank becomes, the more of these natural food sources will be available to support a healthy, thriving colony. But how do you know if there's enough of it in your tank? Look closely at the surfaces inside your aquarium. A thin, slimy, hazy film on the glass, driftwood, or sponge filters is often biofilm, and this is one of the first things shrimp start picking at. Algae will usually appear as green or brown patches on hardscape and plant leaves. You'll also notice your shrimp constantly grazing in those areas. That's a good sign there's a natural food source available. As your tank matures, you might even start seeing algae on the glass panels. That's actually a good thing. It's an excellent food source for baby shrimp. If it builds up on the front panel and starts to block your view, feel free to scrape that off. But try to leave the sides and back panels alone, since your shrimp will happily graze on them. When it comes to bamboo and vampire shrimp, I actually recommend waiting more than 4 weeks before adding them. The more established the tank, the better, because these shrimp are filter feeders. You want to see them actively fanning and feeding from the water column, not constantly picking at the substrate. A little bit of foraging on the bottom is normal, but if they're always down there, it likely means that there's not enough suspended food in the water. At this point, you'll want to start supplementing with a good powdered food. Even in well-established aquariums, there are times when natural grazing just isn't enough, especially for growing juveniles, molting shrimp, or larger colonies. This is where supplemental feeding comes in. Supplemental feeding can be broken down into 2 categories. You have your staple food and your complementary food. What's the difference? Staple foods are your shrimp's main source of balanced nutrition. These are the go-to foods that provide consistent support for growth, color, molting, and reproduction. You might offer these 2 to 3 times a week depending on the size of your colony and how much natural food is available. Staple foods are typically blends of vegetables, algae, minerals, and protein. They can come in either pellet or powdered form. Lately, I've been feeding my shrimp a high-quality protein and algae diet that's also rich in omega-3s. This fusion of land and sea ingredients, called Fuse, is a powdered food I developed in collaboration with Mark Shelley Aquatics, a well-known Neocaridina shrimp breeder and YouTube content creator. I've also been testing a vegetable-based blend I created called Vita. It's a fine powdered mix made from 6 natural ingredients: carrots, sweet potatoes, kale, spinach, pumpkin, and beetroot. Together, Vita and Fuse make up the staple foods my shrimp rely on, and I alternate feeding each of these foods twice a week. Since both are powder-based, I know the food reaches shrimp at all stages of life, babies, juveniles, and adults, spreading evenly throughout the tank. As for my bamboo and vampire shrimp, these powdered foods easily float in the water column and make up a large portion of their diet as well. Complementary foods, on the other hand, are like nutritional boosts. They aren't meant to be fed as often as staple foods, usually just once a week. They help meet specific needs such as encouraging breeding, aiding digestion, supporting recovery after molting, or simply adding variety to your shrimp's diet. There are two complementary foods I currently use: Snow, which is made from soybean hulls, and Buzz, which consists of bee pollen. When used alongside staple foods and natural food sources, these complementary foods help create a well-rounded, varied diet, one that supports your shrimp at every stage of life and keeps them healthy and thriving. If you're interested in learning or trying any of these foods for your own shrimp, I'll leave a link for you in the description below. Use promo code FOREVER10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. The most important part of supplemental feeding is balance. Shrimp are small and their digestive systems work quickly, so a little goes a long way. It's always best to start with a small amount and observe how much gets eaten within an hour. If all the food is gone, you can try offering a little more next time. But if there's food left over, cut back on your next feeding. Keep in mind, your shrimp also have natural food sources in the tank that they'll happily graze on throughout the day. Depending on your colony size and how established your tank is, you might feed anywhere from once to several times a week. The key is to avoid overfeeding. Even the highest quality food can lead to poor water quality if it's left uneaten. So always feed in moderation and let your shrimp's behavior guide you. Even with the best intentions, it's easy to make a few common feeding mistakes, especially when you're just starting out. Whether it's offering too much food, feeding too often, or choosing the wrong type of food for your setup, these missteps can affect water quality and your shrimp's health. So let's go over some of the most common feeding mistakes and how to avoid them. The first mistake, and probably the most common, is overfeeding. It's easy to assume your shrimp need more food than they actually do. But because they're small and already grazing throughout the day, excess food can quickly become a problem. Uneaten food begins to decay, which can spike ammonia and nitrite levels, especially in newer, less established tanks. You might notice cloudy water, bacterial blooms, or shrimp ignoring food altogether. These are all signs of overfeeding. The key is portion control. A good rule of thumb is a pea-sized amount of food for every 20 shrimp, which you can adjust based on how fast it's eaten. You don't need to feed every day either. Once every other day, or even just a few times a week, is usually enough depending on your colony size. If you're feeding pellet foods, blanched vegetables, or shrimp lollies, always remove leftovers after 24 hours to keep your water clean. The second mistake is offering a monotonous diet. Relying on just one type of food or assuming your shrimp will get everything they need by grazing on what's in the tank can lead to nutritional gaps. This is essentially important for shrimp that are molting, breeding, or still growing. Shrimp, like us, benefit from variety. Rotate your staple foods and offer complementary ones as well. You can also add blanched vegetables like zucchini, spinach, or carrots once or twice a week to boost fiber and variety. And don't forget natural supplements like Indian almond leaves, which provide tannins for shrimp health and encourage biofilm growth, giving them something to graze on between feedings. The third mistake is choosing the wrong type of food. It's not just about how much you feed, it's also about the form the food takes. Powdered foods are great for baby shrimp since the particles can drift into the small spaces where they hide, and they're perfect for filter feeders like bamboo and vampire shrimp who catch food from the water column. But if you overdo it, powdered foods can cloud the tank and negatively impact water quality. Pellets are better for targeted feeding, but larger pieces might not break down enough, causing competition between adults and babies. Some, like bamboo or vampire shrimp, may struggle to eat them altogether. That's why it's a good idea to crush pellets for mixed-age colonies and feed them in a dish. It keeps things contained and helps you monitor how much is being eaten. The fourth mistake is overcleaning grazing surfaces. Scrubbing away all the algae and biofilm from your tank's glass and hardscape might make things look neat, but it actually removes one of your shrimp's main food sources. Shrimp process food quickly, and removing these surfaces can leave them without enough to graze on, which leads to stress and even starvation. Instead, clean strategically. Leave algae on the back and side glass, and just clean the front for a clear view. You can also boost natural grazing areas by adding plants like java moss, guppy grass, fast-growing stem plants, or floating plants. These increase the surface area for biofilm to grow, giving your shrimp more places to graze between feedings. They also provide shelter, which helps reduce stress and encourages natural behavior. The fifth and final mistake is overcleaning your sponge filters. This one's especially for anyone using dual sponge filters. It might seem like a good idea to clean both sponges during maintenance, but doing that wipes out a ton of biofilm, detritus, and microscopic organisms that shrimp graze on. Instead, clean one sponge at a time every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how dirty things get. And here's a tip: wait a day or two after feeding before you do any filter maintenance. That way, you're not taking away both their food and their grazing space at the same time. Sponge filters do more than clean your water. They're like mini buffets for your shrimp. Overcleaning them can lead to more competition for food, higher stress, and poor health in your colony. Here's a bonus tip: if you're using a hang-on back filter, add a coarse, pre-filter sponge to the intake. Not only does it prevent baby shrimp from getting sucked in, it also becomes a permanent grazing zone. Just remember, always turn off the filter before removing that sponge. Otherwise, any shrimp hiding there could get pulled into the filter once the sponge is gone. So the next time you see a shrimp picking around the tank like tiny vacuum cleaners, just remember that's not just cute behavior, that's survival in action. Grazing is what they do, and understanding this natural instinct is the key to feeding them properly. By supporting that behavior with a well-established tank, natural food sources, and balanced supplemental feeding, you're setting your shrimp up for a long, healthy life. Avoid the common pitfalls, feed in moderation, and let their activity guide your routine. Let me know in the comments what you feed your shrimp and how often. I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to check the description below for a link to my website where you can find my shrimp food collection, special offers, and promo codes to use. A healthy diet is just one of many essential elements when it comes to breeding Neocaridina shrimp. If you'd like to learn what the other essential elements are, check out this video next. And don't forget to subscribe for more shrimp keeping tips, guides, and advice. I'm Andy, thanks for watching, and I hope I made shrimp keeping a little easier for you. I'll catch you in the next one.